Good afternoon, and welcome to our afternoon chapter meeting, virtual chapter meeting, where we get to meet members of the IFBTA board. Before we get started, let me give you a few housekeeping items. First of all, if you have some questions to submit, you can do it via the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Please specify which speaker you'd like to answer the question, and stay away from questions regarding sales, pricing, political discussions, or any disparaging remarks. All of our attendees will be muted until we get to the live open mic discussion, so you can use the chat to share comments and communicate with the panel until then. But let me go ahead and get started with an update, since we're in a chapter meeting, of the IFBTA and where we stand today. And I'm Rob Grimes, of course, the CEO. In 2020, we finished the year with 10 chapters. We had chapter meetings, 23 of them, which were both virtual and in person. We did a number of in-person events, the last one being Mertech about a year ago, which was my last airline flight. We participated in over 52 webinars around the world, from Singapore to Japan to Russia and the United States. As a matter of fact, we will be speaking at a conference this evening in Japan, and I'll talk about that later. We also formally established a partnership and alliance with the New York State Restaurant Association. We did partner programs with the National Restaurant Association, the NRF, and we formed a partnership with Clarion Events for the 3 shows that they do. And at the end of the year, we expanded our board with new board members, and we continued to participate in the industry through our certification program. But the interesting thing about it is overall, we reached 22,366 people who participated in our various events. In 2021, the outlook and initiatives for the IFBTA are very good and broad. We expect chapter expansion of 5 new chapters, both local, regional, and virtual. We found the virtual chapter worked very well this year, and it allowed people who are not in a regional or local location to participate. We will continue the expansion with some new announcements in the next couple of days of new alliances and strategic partnerships at the state level with other associations and with other events and media. And we increased our presence this next year in New York, California, and Florida through chapters as well as through local events that take place. And we expect to enhance the certification program to add new modules and areas of expertise while supporting industry education across the board through university program, and as we'll be announcing in the next few days, some new key staff. But all of this equals increased participation and engagement of the community and our members. So with that, I did mention that we had increased the IFBTA board, and some of them will be joining us today for the panel discussion. However, you can see that we've greatly expanded the board, and we've covered every area from hotels to the on-site segment to international to all segments between QSR, individual restaurants, the higher end. And so we have a very well-rounded board that leads the IFBTA. And with that, let me go ahead and introduce 3 of our speakers today, as we've been splitting them up and pairing them up actually from different sectors of the industry. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is let them introduce themselves to you. And I would ask each one of our speakers to present yourself, your company, and anything that you feel is of interesting note that you'd like our audience to know about before we start the discussion. And I think, Kathy, we'll start with you.
Hello there. Well, it's good morning from here. I'm Kathy, Director of IT for Eureka Restaurant Group. I've been with Eureka for just 1 year, but it was an interesting year. Most definitely. I've been in the restaurant industry for 33 years and quite a long time, but majority of it was with IT. Half of the time was with operations. And this year, it was a challenging year, but a very innovative year. So we learned a lot about the restaurant industry and about our guests and about what our capabilities are. So 2020 happened and we made it through. So everyone here made it through as well.
Great. Karen?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Karen Bird, I'm the Chief Information Officer for, and I'll have to correct this, Lou, we're really HOA brands now because we have two brands. We have Hooters, which many of you know has been around for many years. And we've just launched a new brand, Hoots Wings, which is casual dining, not casual dining, sorry, more of a quick service restaurant brand. So we've been focused on that for the last year in the midst of COVID. As Kathy said, we've learned a lot of things, we've done a lot of things, and it's been a challenging year for everybody. So I think we'll talk about some of those things as we go through this session.
Great. And Don?
Don Zimmerman. I started here at Landry's as the CIO in August. So I have the dubious distinction, I guess, of moving during a pandemic and starting a new job and trying to bring a company back out of what we were all going through at that time. We certainly have been challenged, but if you don't know Landry's, we're a company of about 600 or so restaurants across 60 different brands or concepts. But we also have hotels, casinos, amusement facilities, and different businesses across the board. So it's very diverse, and we have a lot of opportunity and challenge, but also all of those businesses were impacted pretty significantly through the pandemic, as all of yours were, I'm sure, as well. So we'll talk more about what that did to us, but we're coming out the other side and hopeful and optimistic, and we've got a lot to do.
Well, your introductions, and thank you for that. And let me just remind our attendees today that you can submit your questions through the chat function, and we will go ahead and handle some of those during the open mic. But in reality, the open mic is going to be for you to speak up and share your own experiences, as we would do in any chapter meeting. But Kathy, I want to put you on the spot first, because you've been involved with the IFBTA, and you've been involved in the local chapters for quite a while. But you joined a year ago, your new organization. And I wonder what perspective you have on starting a new job right before, and I assume that you may not have known already that the pandemic was coming, or it was going to do what it did when you took the job.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have been able to predict that happening. I started in February, so just before, right after we came back from MERTEC is when California was put in stay-at-home order. I think the whole nation was, and it was a learning experience, I would say, because starting a new job, you have to learn the culture first and how the business is run, what their service model is. I got a crash course in 2 weeks after we closed our restaurants, what our culture is, what our service model is, and if we are going to change the service model. It was, I think it was interesting to be learning this as I go, but I had a team that we met every day for at least the first month. And I quickly learned, our service model, how we can transform our technology to be benefiting the restaurants and the team at the restaurants, so that we can not just generate more sales, but give them a tool to easily use to help generate those sales while not, stressing themselves out too much.
Well, Don, similarly for you, you took a job in August, or you moved in August, somewhere.
Took the job, yeah.
Took the job in August.
Well,
So you
same time.
However, what you didn't mention in your background, which has been great to get you onto the board, is that you actually started in a large CIO position, actually from retail, but into food service, and then went and spent some time on the other side, on the supplier side with NCR. And then you took this job in August, going back into a large operator. And I'm just sort of wondering do you have a different perspective, or do you think that there's some things that you've seen over the last year or planning forward because of that very close background on both sides in the recent history?
Yeah, I think you kind of recapped that my experience in retail is not totally different than it is in the restaurant business. There's certainly things that are different. But in our company here, we have a lot of retail as well, not big box, not big time retail, but it's a fairly important part of our business. I think the perspective that I've picked up really came from my time as the CIO of Wendy's, which was a pretty significant opportunity. We did a lot of great things turning that company into the digital channel and starting really many strategies that they're now taking advantage of and growing pretty rapidly. But then I moved to NCR and worked on the technology side of the equation. And we obviously were hit by the pandemic impact like all of you were. And so what I was able to do is see some of the product strategies that we reacted quickly with around the pandemic, and then came on board here later on and started using some of those. So I got to see very specifically both sides of the equation. I had an appreciation for what a lot of you are going through. If you were our customers then, we had a lot of conversations, and it was as we look back, it seemed like a year that was 5 years in the making. But sometimes you look back and it goes really fast. In this case, it seemed like it took a long time, but we're coming out, and I think it's going to be a upswing from here for most of us.
Did you have an inside track on getting some things done?
Oh, probably.
Okay, well, Karen,
Yes.
that brings us to you. You also have been in a number of key positions, both with global operations as well as domestic ones as well. And I'm sort of wondering what your perspective is on the impact and how your organization was prepared, or what you saw in other organizations, because you spend so much time in the industry with others, as well as, on the local level where you're at.
Yeah, I think, fortunate for us, we had spent probably 2 years before COVID working on getting online ordering, delivery service, tablets in all of our restaurants. So, when COVID hit, we were pretty well prepared to transition directly into curbside food to go, business. So, I say we're very fortunate because I think, like many of you, we lost about 75% of our workforce, and we had managers running shifts, just to keep the business afloat. So technology really helped from that perspective to keep the restaurants afloat. And had we not been there, we probably would not have been able to quickly transition. I know, Kathy, you did, you were able to quickly transition over into some online ordering solutions for your brand. But, when you have 300 restaurants, 200 restaurants, then, that's pretty difficult. So I think we were very fortunate. We had spent the time and were able to, get that technology.
Well, it's not just that, Karen. It's also if you have franchisees.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That adds a added dimension to it.
Well, we had actually added our franchisees to our online ordering platform. So I think that helped them as well because, to your point, Rob, we've got, 150 some odd franchisees here domestically. And because we had spent the time with them, they were able to transition as well to food to go. Now, like many of you, we had restaurants on both the franchise and the company side that had to close, for many different reasons, just based on where they were and, how COVID hit them. But, we were able, because we, as a brand, had a technology and solution in place for both company and franchise, we were able to, quickly transition.
On last week's call, staff came up, and you just mentioned it, Karen, as well. But companies downsized and furloughed, and then sometimes permanently furloughed some of the staff. And I'd ask this to our whole board, whether it's a smaller company, Kathy, like the one you're working with, or a diverse one, Don, like you're working with in many different industries. What is the going forward piece on the staff? We're coming back, so do we bring back those that we lost? Is there a challenge there? Is it all new people? Is the method of how we communicate, train our staff now changed?
I can jump in. We much like what Karen just described, we cut back almost all of the hourly staff. We had managers running the entire restaurant with a chef or a cook. And then as they've started to build back up through the labor percentage, we're bringing staff back on, putting the procedures back in place that were there when we had more of the staff. But I don't know that we're bringing a lot of the same people back because they may not be available. If they are and we want them, we're trying to get them. But there's a pretty active push, and we probably all have some of that, trying to find staff now to ramp back up as the sales start to pick back up. It's a challenge.
But before we move on to someone else to share their piece on, is the way you bring new staff on then changed given the type of staff and the new limitations and things? Are you going to train them differently or onboard them differently?
I think, no, we're going to go back to the methods, as we can, the methods that we had. I don't think we're radically changing either the onboarding or the training. Mm-hmm. It's just probably a slower pace as we can bring back the guests and get the capacity up, and then staff accordingly. I don't think it's radically different.
So Kathy, same question for you, and I imagine that your number of staff was much different than the other two. So what happened with the staff? What's the short and long-term impact?
So when we first shut down the restaurant, the managers were working front of house, and we had a chef in the back of house, and that was it for our service when we were doing takeout and delivery only. But as we were opening our patios for dining, we had to put in a contactless ordering and pay device, and it worked for a little bit. But once we started opening our restaurants more, we expanded our patios, so we needed to change our service model. Now we are gonna allow our guests to order from the contactless, or if they prefer, we're gonna take orders from table side. So the training completely changed. We were 100% table service. There's no online ordering. There are no contactless ordering at the table. It's a little bit of a change, but right now the hybrid model is what we call it, is working. There are still people that don't want contact from servers, so we allow them to take their contactless ordering and pay, and drive their own experience. So they can order at their pace and then pay at their pace. They don't have to have any contact with our servers, but if they need it, we do have a button called to contact us for service, and someone will be there to help them. On the other hand, we have guests that don't want to use contactless. They would rather come into the restaurant and eat and order from a server. So we have that option as well while we take our orders through a tablet. Either way works for us. Whatever we can do to make our guests more comfortable is what we're aiming for. And that's how we're training our staff. Most of them have, not most, some of them have found new positions at other companies. Some of them left restaurant industry completely. And we brought back, a lot of our old staff that we're glad were still available because they're actually really good. And they were able to transform their service model and adapt to our service model pretty quickly. So we were thankful that we still had their expertise, we had their knowledge, and our management team has been awesome through all this whole thing. I mean, they changed from managers to becoming servers and back to managers. I could not have imagined that something like this would have happened, but I'm glad that we have a good team in our leadership and good team in our restaurants.
So rather than looking backwards, because we've all made changes, and I'm really hopeful that over the next few months we'll see our industry coming back. It isn't going to be a new norm. It may just be additional opportunities of how we deliver service in it. Karen, Kathy just talked about changing the service model, and you have a very unique service model, and you're known for your service and your wings. And the question is, what are the positive changes that come out of this? Some things that you maybe never thought would have applied or got accelerated that were on your wish list?
So a couple things. First, I want to go back to the people side. And, you know, we talked about the 75% reduction in workforce. So that included all of our corporate staff, and we let go all of our trainers, right? So now think about this. We're bringing people back into our restaurant. We have no trainers to train, right? So we've actually, part of the work that we've been doing, thinking for the future, is we've selected and we're going to be implementing a new learning management system that actually will allow us to train virtually our stores and our team members and our managers. So we'll be launching that. It'll be a new way of learning, a new way of training for us, because we just don't have the staff to put back in the field to go train them. So, you know, that's one of the things that we're actually in the midst of doing right now.
Wait, before you leave that subject, we did actually get a question about that. So since you're on it, while you're putting in an LMS in order to effectively train more with less, so to speak, is there anything that you are also, as part of that, doing to speed up the training because you need to bring back people quicker and larger numbers?
We aren't at this point. You know, we're, you know, like everybody else, just dealing with training, you know, as we're bringing people back. The managers are responsible for training, but, you know, we really want to accelerate this into a new learning model. So, yeah.
And your other point, sorry, I interrupted you there.
That's okay. So going forward, so I talked about, you know, we had every delivery service provider out there, and we were using tablets in the restaurant. And as you can imagine, having 5 tablets there was, from an operational standpoint, really not good, especially when you don't have a bunch of people in the restaurant. So really the focus for us has been to automate, integrate all of our delivery service providers and take that responsibility out of the store so the orders just come directly in. We've been focused on moving as much as we can to Microsoft Azure, you know, and putting our menus in Azure and feeding those to the delivery service providers so we can automate. So we've been really focusing in those areas. You know, it all goes back to how do we increase sales? How do we alleviate some of the operational issues that are going on in the store, especially with less team members that are there. So.
Don? Something that you see as maybe a positive change going forward?
Well, unlike Kathy's experience, we didn't have ordering channels or delivery channels in many, if any, of our concepts at the start of the pandemic. So that was the big focus as we could get them implemented, to have at least that stream of business to keep us afloat, really. And we did that. Now what we're doing is making it right. You know, many of those didn't have good food pictures, you know, didn't have processes that wrapped. It was just kind of really put in quickly to get the job done. So really getting that digital ordering channel with delivery done the right way it is now a primary focus. But also in the broader context, and much like Karen said, moving things to Azure. Our big themes are simplify. How do we simplify our world so that we can be more agile? You know, we're not sitting here thinking, well, that'll never happen again. You know, we want to be better positioned should a pandemic or some other big event cause us to have to pivot quickly and do things differently. So the whole simplification and agility underpinning affects many things, and cloud is certainly a part of that.
So you just threw out a bunch of terms.
Uh-oh.
And you know what? Every time, unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to do it this year, but every time I go to an industry trade show, I always look up at those signs that are hanging down the aisles to see what they say on them. Like, does it say data analytics? Does it say this or that? Just to sort of figure out really where the industry is going. And you've used the word agile, you simplify, you've used some computer terms, the cloud, everybody should know. You know, not all of management before was really supportive of all these things. And they used to say that, that the budget lags behind, the innovation and technology. But you just said that you also, in this case, your technology probably ended up lagging behind the budget because you had to throw in a bunch of stuff at the last minute.
That's right.
Is that going to continue? now are they very focused on these terms and where you go this next year with your budget and your priorities?
We are right now, and keep in mind, I'm a recovering technology provider, so not been way far enough to lose the terms and the hyperbole, but those are real terms that we are using internally. At this point, I think it's still too fresh. We're still, still reeling. We're still down, but it's on the right trajectory. If things get back to the way they were in 19, we'll see if the focus remains the same, but I think it will, because we learned a lot, and we can lean back and say, if we had this in 2020, this is how it would have helped us get through some of the stuff that we're challenged with. So we can use that, even if the mindsets start to drift back to what normal used to be.
Well, the interesting thing is that Karen, had said that, they were fortunate that they had already distributed online ordering out to their units. So Karen, you may have been in a better position, if you will, because you didn't have to run and put that in. And Kathy, in smaller operations, sometimes they actually have more tools and technology, or they have less tools and technology. And I'm sort of curious, because we've used this term service model. Does some of this incremental sales that each of you have, well, at least two have talked about, some of the incremental sales that have come about by new service models and delivery and things like that, do they stay going forward? Does that become a new budget item in the second half of 2021 and in 2022, a new day part?
I think so for us, because we had not had a big budget for technology, and what we learned in 2020 is that technology can help efficiency, and now everyone wants new technology for each department. We've got accounting, we have payroll and operations. They all want something new, including marketing as well. And what once was a small budgeted department has grown to could be double, could be triple. But it was an eye opener for everyone to notice that we can get technology to work for us, and we can create technology that can help us do other things, like focus on customer service rather than the tiny little things with maybe timing of orders, getting orders flow through to the POS rather than having the server ring in the order from the tablet. And that created efficiency for our service model. And the integration from the orders to the POS to the kitchen system was highly efficient for us, because the last thing we need is for the two people that are working in the restaurants to have more work and more stress. So I'm coming from operations. When I was working in the restaurants, I came up with these things back in 2000. Like, if we could have something that can help me do this, do that. But not until 2020 that we discovered we can have these things and apply it to our operations business. It's a totally different world now. And I'm kind of glad that IT and technology got the forefront and attention of the entire company now.
Karen, is that the same experience for you?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it comes so fast that some days my head just keeps on spinning. I mean, there's new requests every day. I think the organization definitely has seen the value of technology and how it can help the business. We're working right now. Let me step back one sec. One of the things in the table service environment that's been, difficult for companies, our size, my size, has been to spend additional money on hardware that has to go into the restaurant to enable things like contactless payment or, pay at the table, right? And that's been a no-go for us. But with contactless payment, customers using their own devices, that's become something that's very interesting. And so I think we'll see more and more of this happen. I don't know if you saw the announcement of American Airlines, but they're doing the testing they're doing in Dallas with, all of their contactless check into your flights. It's, they're using, face technology. And, I use a QR code to get a hold of an agent to help me at the airport. So I think we're going to continue to see vast improvements and, technology changing so rapidly that's just going to flow down and, be part of the restaurant industry as well.
Well, that what you just brought up about American, I saw something on United about that last night, the same thing. And there was, I think Delta has something, but when they are showing these things, they're showing partnerships in travel. And the applications I was watching on the news last night were not just what they were doing for the airline, but they were bringing up restaurants and casinos and hotels. And Donna, have you been approached about any new partnerships with some of the travel providers across the board to create one ecosystem?
Yes. Yeah. Without getting ahead of what I can say publicly, we are in conversations with some of those to leverage what we have and what they have and create a different experience for our shared customers.
So you all have talked about the acceleration of priorities and technologies and things like that. A long time ago, we used to talk about the seat back on the airplane, that your boss would sit there, open up the airplane magazine, look at all this cool gadgets, and then come to you and say, how come we can't have, robotic vacuum cleaners, and things like that. So what are the requests that you are getting from management today, since they set the budget and the priorities? You've taken care of, obviously, making things happen. So are there some new, unusual things that you never thought you would hear that are coming forward today? Kathy?
Well, we have lots. The major request from operations is to get our third-party delivery integrated into our POS. There are solutions out there, but we're trying to get it to integrate directly from our online ordering platform so that we can have everything integrating to one, from one source to our POS. That's in the works. The other item we're trying to work through is getting our table management system to integrate with our POS as well. The reason why we want that is so that the guests can place themselves on a wait list. And while they put themselves on a wait list, maybe if they can place their orders ahead of time and then get seated and then send their orders to the kitchen. So we're still working on those two aspects, and we want that efficiency for our guests. So our main goal for our online ordering and our contactless ordering is the ease of use and the flow through. The less buttons they can have to click, it will be easier for them to use it. So ease of use for our guests, ease of use for our staff, and hopefully everyone gets happy because we don't give them grief by using new technology. It's just a learning curve. Mm-hmm. It seems like everyone's been challenged to use technology in 2020. And as we approach 2021, it seems like people are getting used to using technology, whether it's online ordering, scanning the QR code. Even last night I went to a restaurant, they require us to scan a QR code to put ourselves on a wait list. And there were 3, maybe 4 people that didn't know what to do. So, technology person walks up and say, what can I help you with? And they were like, oh, is this what we're going to have to do from now on? And I was like, well, you might want to get used to it because there's a lot of people that are,
they're not just being trained by you, they're being trained by other industries. The ATM machine for the banks, the kiosks for airlines, which of course we just brought up some new things for the airlines, and the contactless and things. So they're getting trained outside, like in retail, scan your own groceries, or even just use your phone for groceries. So it does the same thing. Karen or Don, your thoughts on what are you being asked that are the new priorities by management that might not have been on your list before, but now all of a sudden they're very technology enabled and interested?
I can go. For me, it's, I'm not being asked, internally for any new widgets for, the team here. It's been truly focused on, if we see something out there, I partner very closely with our senior VP of what we call food to go. And so if there's things that he or I see that could in any way help us increase sales in the restaurants, from, if it's technology, that's what we're going after, right? So it's increased sales or, operational efficiencies. I will tell you, like many companies, our inventory and distribution process, all these back end things are challenging at best because they've grown up over time. We have integrations to, home integrations to our distributors that are out there. So, we're working on cleaning up that piece in the background. How do we use, new technology solutions to, really build those integrations between our supply chain and our distributors and the restaurants. So those are the kinds of things we're focusing on and being asked to focus on.
John?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a lot of really unique things, but it's more of a pent up backlog. It's kind of like we lost a year plus, and now everything, we need that, and now we need it more than ever. The things we did new were digital ordering, digital marketing, and that whole 360-degree view of the customer. That was new for us, but it's not necessarily new for the industry or for many of you, nor is digital ordering. But again, in our case, with the high-end fine dining, it wasn't deemed a priority until, pandemic showed us maybe it should be. The contactless was probably the most unique aspect, both for menus and for payments, and putting that in place. But to your core question, Rob, I don't get a lot of the, hey, I just saw this on an airline flight. I guess you're not making any flights. But it's more, hey, these things that we wanted to do, they're now coming back with a new sense of urgency versus never having been thought of before.
So have you updated your wish list?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Won't ask you what's on it, but we can compare notes, right?
Yeah.
I tell you what, it's too bad there wasn't a CES this year to go walk around and shop for the candy and then figure out how we can get that in, right?
That's right.
So it really changed things up. Karen, you've worked. I'm not going to ask Don this question because he's too close. He's still got 1 foot halfway out of the wherever it was he was at before. But Karen, you work with a lot of different suppliers as well. And you do today and you have in the past. Are there any surprises that came up from the supplier community and working with you as this thing went on? And also surprises from suppliers for the future that you think are going to change on that side? And of course, we have suppliers on this call, members, but are there some observations you've made? If we could mute the microphone there, that'd be good. There we go. Okay, Karen?
Yeah, I think the supplier question that really I was most happy with is, all of us were going through some really, really hard times, shutting restaurants down. We lost, 80% of our sales, if not more, in many situations. And when we asked our supplier partners to step up and help us, give us terms on payments and, just help us, the majority of them did. And I will tell you, for those that did, they're going to be my suppliers, right? They truly partnered with us. They helped us through the bad time and continue to help us through the bad time. And that's what a partner does, right? And so I was surprised that they were so giving, but so very, very happy and thankful that they were, because it saved us, right? I mean, it really did. I mean, everybody was in this boat and they really helped us out. So, going forward, they will be my primaries, as we move forward.
Don, same question for you. You stepped into some suppliers that you already knew, but are there some surprises that have come from the supplier community?
I think much like Karen said, the flexibility that we've seen from, I would say, the majority is surprising and refreshing. There are some, though, that didn't quite take the same approach for whatever reason. I spent more of that conversation on the other side of it. By the time I got here, a lot of those discussions had already taken place with the providers that Landry's had already depended on. So I stepped into what they had done earlier in the summer, but it was still pretty clear which ones are flexible and get it, and those that didn't.
Mhm. Okay, so there was a term that you used, Don, earlier, which I thought was rather interesting. You said they're going to make it right, that you put so many different things in place, if I got this right, that you now need to make it right. And we've had a number of people talk about that they did move very quickly. I'm not so sure this is exactly what you meant, but we've had a lot of people talk about how they had to throw things in very quickly to do things without necessarily thinking about the long-term consequence. And all three of you have served in consulting roles to your organizations and in leadership positions in the industry. That's not unique. So what is the advice going forward, or the thinking when you throw a bunch of applications in to take care of business right now? How should companies be looking at that the rest of the year, perhaps, to make it right, and what they threw in?
I think, from my perspective, we actually created a little mini organization within our ops organization, but did it in October. But that organization within ops is dealing with to-go and delivery specifically. And so working with that leadership team now is, you kind of look at it and go, all right, we're going to start over, but we're not going to shut everything off. We've got things going on and not everything's the way we want it. But if we were starting today, what would we do? What would we put in place? What processes do we need? What negotiation tactics, even what kind of pricing can we take on? All those things, as if you hadn't already gone in, we're redoing and fixing and changing where we can. So it was kind of, they did the right thing to get it out there in the first place, but not everything was knit together the way you do it if you planned it out, worked the plan, and put it in the way you hoped.
Karen or Kathy, your observations on this?
Yeah, I can go. I'll tell I talked about the integration of the tablets, right? And something very, very simple that it is very hard. We had to put a interim solution in place, if you think about it. So you have menu item availability at the store, 86 items, right? And so, there's a whole process about 86 items in the store, but then how do you get that out to now all these integrated, delivery service partners or your online ordering, and not only get it out there, but also when they have product back in, make sure that that product's available on all the sites. So we put an interim process. Our interim process was having the help desk, load down files every day. And so now we're taking a step back and saying, okay, well, that's not efficient, because that's not really what the help desk should be doing. And really working on the automation of how do we get those types of, item availabilities directly out to the, the delivery service providers, and automate that entire process. So that would be, one example.
Kathy?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of temporary solutions just to survive. And we had to put in solutions for online ordering, but in the meantime, we needed to upgrade our POS hardware and our Wi-Fi and had to put cellular backup. So as we started our online ordering, which was temporary, we had a little bit of time to upgrade everything, all the equipment and the routers, and increase our bandwidth for our internet. But once we were stable and we were about to reopen, our locations that we temporarily closed, we had to, we realized that we had to consolidate all the temporary solutions to a more permanent solution. So as we were starting to get more stable at our restaurants, then we started with our contactless ordering and rolled it out to our stores. And removing those temporary solutions, because the last thing we need is to have 10 different solutions, and which may result in the common goal. So we wanted to make sure we just had one solution and focus on that going forward. It'll be ease of use, not for just our employees, our management team, but also for our guests.
So at this point, as is traditional with any one of our chapter meetings, we start out with a presentation, but we really open up the mics. And I think this might be a good time. We've got just about 15 minutes left to open up the mics and really move to that part of the session. This is for you. So not only should you open up your mics, but you should actually turn on your video so we can see you there, as if we were sitting across a table, which we hope to do soon. And just really open it up for you to share your own experiences with each other, and you can each take you can each answer any question that you want. And I don't know if somebody wants to either cue into something that we discussed and bring that up, or bring up something new and discuss it amongst ourselves. But of course, it's not going to work if your mics are turned off.
Hi, Robert. This is Kevin from Boston's Pizza. I have a question that I asked in the chat as it relates to training new employees. I recently got introduced into VR interactive training with VR headsets and the whole 9 yards. And it was new to me as far as virtual interactive training for employees. For me, it didn't solve the problem of actual live training and on-the-job training. It resolved the issue at the beginning of training for knowledge learning and situational learning. Does anybody else have any insight on this type of training, or if it's even effective in your opinions?
And this is for anybody.
This is Lou at Red Lobster. From an innovation R&D perspective, we looked at virtual training. It's very resource intensive. The concept is great, and because of the resource intensiveness, you can read into that expensive. We've got a learning management system. We use Scoops, and all of our employees down to the hourlies in the restaurants, basically each position has a set of Scoop videos that they go through, and we've got the in-restaurant where they're shadowing someone for a couple of days, and then they start taking over responsibility on their shift. And as they move up in experience, there's additional training that they go through, and we're not going to be abandoning that approach. I mean, like everybody else, we're right now in a fight to hire enough hourly employees for the surge in demand that I think it's safe for me to assume that we're all seeing a surge in demand here the last couple of weeks, and don't necessarily expect that to back off materially unless there's some unforeseen surge in COVID cases. But I do understand what you're trying to do, but again, it's very resource intensive.
Anyone else? Okay. Does anybody else have something else that they would like to share with the group and your experience, your priorities, your company's priorities, or things you have observed?
Hey, Rob, it's Edgar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to ask the panel if anybody is spinning up ghost kitchens rather than building standard brick and mortar stores. We're considering spinning up our first ghost kitchen concept, pickup only, and wondering what everybody else's experience is with that. I know Panda just announced they're spinning up their first ghost kitchen as well.
So let's expand that a little bit, if it's okay. Ghost kitchens, cloud kitchens, and dark kitchens, because we had heard from Wowbow a few weeks ago about using people's existing kitchens, unused time. And Gary Brunsman, I see you shaking your head, so I don't know if you have something you want to add there.
Well, there are a couple of different flavors of this. I think we've talked about it before, but in terms of the ghost kitchen, when I was doing some consulting work with Marcos, they had just started into that process. They had 2 live, working on 2 more. Financially, the numbers are still, early, still not determined. I think there are some possibilities with the ghost kitchen, but I think you really have to look at the cost side. That's what Marcos was concerned about, was the cost of operating out of a ghost kitchen. Getting the volume through could be a concern. You're in a small space. Now they were trying to do ghost kitchen with delivery, no pickup. When they were partnered with one of the big 4 delivery companies. So it's an interesting idea. I'm just not sure myself, from what I've seen and heard, whether it's going to make it or not. I think the jury's still out. I think we need more financial data. I think people need to look at it. But there are a lot of people exploring the idea and testing it.
Anyone else? It's certainly getting a lot of press. It's getting a lot of press from some celebrities as well right now on this. And Lou's raising his hand, but it's getting a lot of press coming out of Orlando as well.
Yeah, I mean, Red Lobster, before the shutdown, we opened a location, a ghost kitchen up in Chicago. We specifically picked a location where we didn't have any brick and mortar restaurants. And then the shutdown occurred. The location is doing a decent business. We pulled back on, we've got plans to do 3 more ghost kitchens. And as Gary said, I mean, it's really too early right now to even talk about the financials. But what we were waiting for was for the restaurants to reopen. And as restaurants are reopening up in Chicago, we wanted to see what was going to happen to the demand in that ghost kitchen. And we're really not seeing a decrease in demand for the concept out of that one particular location. So, I wouldn't say we're raving fans with regard to the concept, but we're certainly seeing enough positive results to where we haven't decided to just shut it down.
I think, we're not doing it yet, but what we're having a few conversations, because the volume of some specific restaurants for orders and takeout are so significant that, during a shutdown where nobody was in the dining room, it was fine. But now if the dining room comes back up, if mobile or digital orders maintain a reasonably high level, we're going to need some capacity. So my answer to the question would be, it's going to be episodic. There's going to have to be places. Lou said you went where there's no branded restaurants. We might have to put one where we have a capacity constraint or issue. But I think we're in an experimental stage across that whole board too.
Don, that capacity thought is one that came up in a recent conversation I had with one of the very large on-site feeding companies with Aramark. And we were talking about how this has impacted the universities, and many universities have very, very large kitchens when they distribute. And and I suspect that some of your operations do as well when you're talking about casinos and things. And we may see people becoming dark ghost kitchens because they have excess capacity in a very large community kitchen, like a university or something like that they decide to get into the business.
I could see that happening. They may not be where we need them, but maybe someone else needs the capacity and we could provide that. So.
Or we see what Wow is doing, where they're doing sous vide cooking and basically setting people up for $500 or $800 to be a franchisee, send it in bags, and they just deliver it basically. So other discussion points or top of mind thinking, I
have a question, Rob.
Sure, go ahead.
I mean, taking advantage of the ghost kitchen conversation, I read an article about White Castle. You might have read it, all of you. And since you're experts, I wanted to ask you what you think. They did a ghost kitchen in Florida, I think. And then there was so much demand that they shut it down. So to me, it didn't make sense. Why would you do that? I mean, sometimes I know it's easier to not mess up your customer or your guest experience, but wouldn't it have made more sense to open another ghost kitchen right next to it, if that's the point, right?
Or
So
just
what-
add some of their hamburger robots to it.
I was
Maybe,
gonna
yeah,
ask,
but
yeah, do you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
if
but,
the ghost
I
kitchen is
mean-
using Flippy? Does anybody know?
I don't know. But in your
I
whole
don't-
experience,
don't
what do
believe
you
they
think
were-
happened there?
I don't believe they were using Flippy. But again, I mean, I think we have to be careful for anything that was opened, that was just recently opened in the last 6 to 9 months. You're going to see unprecedented demand from that location because everybody's looking online with the number of dining rooms that are closed and the numbers of people that are not willing to put themselves at risk out in a public location. I'm not saying that once everything opens up again, if White Castle was to reopen that location, that the same thing wouldn't happen again. I mean, I was eating. Interesting story. I'm eating lunch at a local place yesterday, and I walked in around 1 o'clock, and I was talking to the server, and this is a very small sort of. It's a small single proprietor location. They had just gotten done doing a 50 burger order, which was unprecedented for them. And they had no idea where the demand came from or how these people even got their, got to their site. So I don't know, it kind of begs the question, I think we all got hammered on Valentine's Day, Mother's Day last year. I mean, with all of this online ordering, if you don't have some way of sort of universally throttling these channels, I mean, we had locations in our system, I'll tell you, last year, Mother's Day, they were taking in upwards of 200 orders every 15 minutes. We couldn't turn the channels off fast enough. And by the time that first 15-minute happened, I mean, that restaurant was sunk.
So that's interesting, Lou, because people, the concept of throttling actually came up years ago. I think perhaps Gary first with somebody like Panera, who had to do some redesign of kitchens when they successfully, but also Starbucks, who was doing so many orders, but they didn't have any more room to make any more barista stations, yet everybody thought 4 to 6 minutes. And so maybe there is a new concept or a new revenue opportunity with smaller, unattended or limited operations.
Yeah, that's correct. Both Panera and Chipotle had the same problem, that when the volume goes up, you've either got to figure out how do you get more capacity. A lot of our Panera 2.0 work was to expand the kitchen. Chipotle put in that second line. Possibly White Castle, these ghost kitchens are fairly small and they're in shared spaces. So there's 2 or 3 players that are putting them together. There might not have been another space available nearby. I don't know enough about the details, but these are not the ghost kitchens I'm familiar with. These are not large spaces. You end up sharing refrigeration, storage, and what it's designed to do. So, you're trying to maximize your throughput, but then there's a limitation on how much you can get through a ghost kitchen at the same time.
Remember those signs above the aisle, right? 2 years ago, every conversation, every conference was about online ordering and the cost of third-party delivery. Would it work? Would it not? While people still talk about, I guess, the cost of third-party delivery, they're not talking about whether it'll work or not. And now, if you look above the aisle, it's going to say ghost kitchens, but also cloud kitchens. The one company, I think it's Reef, which is opening up what they call vessels. And they basically drive something out, plant it in a place to take care of the problem that Gary just brought up. And they leave it there, and then they go ahead and operate from there. What about, nobody's really actually mentioned curbside or anything like that, and pickup. And I know some people are looking at it, and there have been a number of discussions about lockers that have come up where people are talking about actually putting food pickup lockers and things. Has anybody had that? And that'll be the last question because we're going to need to wrap up.
Well, that's actually part of our ghost kitchen proposal. It'll be a ghost kitchen with lockers up front. So if anybody's had good success with a particular vendor, I'd like to know.
Great. So, I think we actually do need to wrap up. I guess my timer was a little bit off. I want to thank everybody for attending today. We do have some upcoming events. There's another virtual conversation with the board on Thursday, the 25th at 11 a.m. Eastern. We will be doing conferences. If they happen, we'll have some in-person events at the Western Food Service Show in August in Florida, in Orlando, and then FS Tech in September in Texas. And also, I will tell you, if anybody is interested in joining me in Japan tonight at 9 p.m. East Coast, the IFBTA will be, in fact, addressing the Food Service Technology Consortium of Japan tonight. And if you need a link for that, you can send us a note. And then next week, we'll be joined by 3 more board members, including our chair, Lou and Vikram and Umara. And again, that's the 25th from 11 to 12 noon East Coast. And with that, I want to thank each of our board members and all of you for attending today and being a member and a part of the IFBTA. And we'll just look forward to continuing the discussion as we always do. So thank you very much for joining us.